and I was left speechless. But I still looked up at Jian, who had been with me for 5 years, and said tremblingly I didn't push her. She dragged me to the pool. I was on the terrace just now. I still wanted to mention the phone call I heard on the terrace, but Zian didn't give me the chance. He frowned and roughly interrupted my explanation. Shenking, you're still quibbling. Do you only realize you're wrong when you experience this pain yourself? I looked at Jian's angry eyes and suddenly felt the coldness in his tone. The next moment, a big hand pushed me hard. I stumbled and fell into the pool, reaching out to the people on the shore for help. But Zian only looked down at me coldly and asked, Shenking, do you know you're wrong? Before I lost consciousness, through the blurred vision, I saw Zi Yicheng's anxious face. He held me in his arms and swam towards the shore. I heard Zi Yicheng's hoarse voice, King, don't be afraid, I'm here. When I woke up again, I was in the hospital. Shi Yicheng was sitting beside the bed, carefully peeling an apple with his head down. It was obvious that he must do this often. The peel was peeled off together with the flesh, leaving only an oxidized and yellowed core. I pursed my lips and called his name, Zhou Yicheng. The delicate young man looked up at me when he heard his name. I stared at his deep black pupils and said calmly it was me. I didn't push her. After saying that, he clenched my hands under the quilt, waiting for Zi Yicheng's reaction. Unexpectedly, Shar Yicheng responded quickly. He nodded as soon as I finished speaking. I know. Before I could say the explanation I had prepared, he said in a low voice, I know you wouldn't do something like that. Zhou Yicheng's rust surprised me. A warm current slowly surged around my icy heart. After hesitating for a moment, I asked Zhou Yicheng, why do you think I wouldn't do it? Why do you trust me so firmly? Why were you so flustered when you saw me fall into the pool? Why are you so kind to me just because you want the Shen family's support? Yicheng smiled gently, carefully picked a piece of intact flesh from the core, and held it out to me with a toothpick. Shenking, do you really not remember me? I stared at Zi Yicheng's delicate face carefully for a long time, but still found nothing. I heard that he was only taken back to the Zi family when he was 15. The first time I saw him was at a Zi family banquet, when Zi Yan announced that I would be his wife in the future. At that time, Zhou Yicheng looked up and stared at me silently for a long time. Other than that, we were just nodding acquaintances who would greet each other at banquets. Then I hit my head and was hospitalized, and Zi Yicheng suddenly changed from my brother minus and minus law to my fiancé. He looked down at the intact flesh and asked uncertainly, Zi Yicheng, did you recognize the wrong person? Maybe his kindness was for me. After realizing this, a sharp soreness came from my heart again, but Zi Yicheng didn't answer this question. He calmly mentioned a charity project of the Shen family on an island 10 years ago. At that time, Qian's group decided to donate a batch of materials to help the children in the welfare home with their lives and studies, and finally selected an orphanage on the island as the recipient. It was summer vacation, and I begged my father to take me to the island orphanage. While my father was giving a donation speech on stage, I wandered around the orphanage and saw 3 or 4 boys bullying a poor little boy. After driving away the bullies, I gave all the chocolate I had to the little boy. His eyes were bright as he looked at me. I even asked my father to fund his studies in life, but later the dean said he had been picked up by his biological father, and the matter was dropped. Because the little boy's eyes were too bright, I remembered this incident deeply until now. I was a little uncertain. After all, the difference between the current Shar Yicheng and that island orphan was too great. The only similarity was probably their beautiful eyes. I stared at Zi Yicheng's delicate peach blossom eyes in a daze. He raised his eyebrows, smiled brightly at me, and said something that wasn't funny at all, Mrs. She is not my biological mother. My mother died when she was raising me until I was 7. I lived in the island orphanage for 8 years and was taken back to the Zi family when I was 15. So, I know you wouldn't push Suyin into the pool. Even Zi Yicheng, who had only met me once when we were kids, was sure I wouldn't do such a thing. But Ji Yan had personally pushed me into the pool and made me apologize to Sucha. I lowered my eyelashes silently and said in a dull voice, "But the pool's surveillance is broken. There's no way to restore the scene." Upon hearing this, Zhou Yicheng reached out and lifted my jaw. His warm thumb gently stroked my tightly bitten lip, and he said with a smile, "If I make them apologize to you, King, will you reward me with a kiss?" Zhou Yan and Suya may want to apologize, but Zhou Yicheng confident look made me a little shaken. After thinking for a while, I nodded gently and asked curiously, "How will you make them apologize?" Zhou Yicheng didn't say anything. He just took me back to the Zi family's main residence after going through the discharge procedures. The black Maybach stopped in front of the hillside villa. Zhou Yicheng held my hand and walked slowly towards the living room of the main residence. In the living room, Ji Yan was kneeling on the ground, his white shirt stained with several bloodstains. Uncle Z was holding a black whip and asked angrily, "Do you admit your mistake?" When he heard the footsteps, Ji Yan looked up. Seeing my hand clasped with Zhou Yicheng's, he froze for a moment, and a touch of obscurity flashed across his dark pupils. He sneered at me in a cold voice, "Shun King, doing all these tricks to make Tian Shouken and make me get punished? Are you satisfied now?" Ji Yan thought I had reported him to the Z family. After all, we had been together for 5 years, but in his heart, I was actually so unbearable. Probably used to Zian's hurt, I felt nothing when I heard his sneer. I just looked at his bleeding wounds indifferently and said calmly I didn't do it. Believe it or not, my hand was squeezed, and I looked up with trembling eyelashes. Zhou Yicheng winked at me, then walked to Ziyan, squatted down calmly and said, "Ziyan, have you ever thought about why Suchen left you back then? Why did an extra 5 million appear in her account?" Zhou Yan frowned and said coldly, "Do you think making up these lies can change my opinion of Shen King?" Ji Yicheng shook his head. "I just think you're stupid." When Ziyan glared at him angrily and was about to get up to fight back, a recording suddenly played in the living room. "Mrs. She's trying to send me abroad again with the same trick. A mere 5 million. Jian has more than that now." Ziyan's eyelashes trembled, and his hands clenched tightly, even bulging with veins. The recording continued until a splash of water was heard, and then it ended. Yan's face turned pale, and he staggered as if he was about to cry. But Zhou Yicheng showed no mercy to his brother. He reached out and grabbed his collar, forcing him to face me, and said coldly, "Apologize to King." Jian slowly raised his head and looked at me silently. A touch of water seemed to flash in his dark pupils, or maybe not. He opened his mouth but said nothing. Just as the black whip was about to fall on Ziyan again, the voice of the doorman came from the video doorbell. "Mr. Z, Miss Suyan is here. She said she has something to find the young master." Before Ziyan could speak, Mrs. Ji, who was sitting aside, snorted and said, "Let her in." As soon as Suyan entered, she went straight to Ziyan. When she saw the whip marks and blood on his body, she immediately burst into tears and begged Mrs. Z, who looked resentful on the sofa, "Even if you hate me and want me to leave, you shouldn't torture Yan like this. Yan is your biological son after all." Sujan naturally thought that Zhu Yan was being punished because he wanted to marry her into the Z family. But Mrs. Xi's sarcastic expression and the other's looks made her flustered. Until Ziyan looked at her indifferently and asked coldly, "What are you doing here?" This unease reached its peak. Sujan bit her lip, took out the account balance on her phone and showed it to Ziyan, saying a grieved lie. "Yan, Mrs. Z transferred a sum of money to my account and told me to leave you. I love you. I would never leave you for money." She thought that after she finished speaking, Zhou Yan would pity her, pull her into his arms, and then argue with Mrs. Z for her. But now, after listening, Zhu Yan only asked coldly, "Is that so?" Suyan thought it shouldn't be like this. She trembled her eyelashes and sobbed. "Yan, did Sister King say something to you?" "It's okay. I know Sister King doesn't like me. If she said something to you, Hearing Su Tian's ambiguous words, which seemed to blame me indirectly. I only felt ridiculous. Before I could retort, Zhu Yan seemed to can't stand it anymore and directly pushed Sutyan away, looking at her coldly and sneering. Now you still want to frame others? Sutyan stumbled and asked in panic. What? She sneered, picked up the listening pen on the table, and the familiar recording played again in the living room. All the color faded from Sutyan's face, but she still insisted, trying to hold Ziyan's sleeve to explain. Yan, I just love you too much. Zhu Yan didn't speak, just kept pushing Sutyan away. I stood aside happily, watching the scene of them turning against each other. When Sutyan was pushed away by Ziyan again, she suddenly looked up at me and said sharply, as if she was collapsing, if it weren't for the way you looked at Shen King, why would I frame her for pushing me into the pool? You said you love me, but when Shen King is around, you always look at her secretly. She's clearly someone else's fiancé. Why you still keep her photos? Why are you unwilling to delete them? Upon hearing this, a look of confusion flashed across Ian's face, and he said angrily, "Shut up." I said those were accidentally left before. He frowned and was about to drag Sutyan, who was sitting on the ground, out, but Sutyan refused to let go, her eyes red. "Zhu Yan, you're so stupid. When I said Shen King pushed me, you pushed her into the pool too. When I said I had no choice back then, you dumped your fiancé and got back together with me." Sutyan laughed and cried, as if she was crazy, and cursed sharply. "You listen to me so much, why can't you listen to me forever, love me forever? Why do you have to like Shen King? Why do you abandon me too?" After dragging Sutyan out of the hillside villa with a cold face, Zhu Yan walked up to me in embarrassment, fell silent for a long time. Just as I was getting impatient to turn to leave, he suddenly said hoarsely, "I'm sorry." I nodded silently and took the hand that Zhe Yicheng held out to me, walking out. Now I was already used to Zi Yicheng as holding an intimacy, thinking about the promise I made in the hospital. I pursed my lips and pulled Zi Yicheng as slave. When he looked down at me, I pulled his body and kissed him on the lips, saying in a soft voice, pretending to be coquette, "This is the reward." Zhe Yicheng's peach blossom eyes were full of smiles. He reached out and held my waist, leaned down and kissed me again. His scarlet tongue wandered freely in my mouth like a snake. When I was out of breath, he pulled back a little and said hoarsely, "This is the real reward." I trembled my eyelashes and reached out to push his hand around my waist. It was too hot and too tight. But the inexplicable gaze from behind made me turn my head subconsciously. Zhu Yan hadn't left yet. He stared at my lips, which had been kissed by Zhe Yicheng in a daze, and a touch of obscurity floated in his dark pupils. When I found him looking, he opened his mouth and said something softly, which I didn't hear. But I didn't care anymore, so I turned around, pulled Zhe Yicheng's hand, and walked out of the Zi family's main residence. King, I've kept my promise to you in the hospital. When will you marry me and be Mrs. C? Hearing this, I looked up at Zi Yicheng in front of me. In the stairwell of the hospital, I had promised Zi Yicheng that if he helped me get revenge on Ziyan, I would marry him and be Mrs. Z. Now I had seen Ziyan's dejected and embarrassed appearance. As for Zhi Yicheng, without realizing it, I had already regarded him as my fiancé. More importantly, Zhi Yicheng loved me. Looking at Zi Yicheng's increasingly nervous expression after asking, I smiled and held his hand, which had bulging veins beside him, and said sweetly, "Got it. It'll be your Mrs. Zhu. We'll get married this month." As soon as I finished speaking, Zhi Yicheng suddenly picked me up in his arms, his warm breath falling on my neck, his voice hoarse. King, I can finally marry you. After setting the wedding date, my wedding with Zi Yicheng was scheduled for the end of the month. During this period, Yan came to see me several times, but I turned him down with different reasons. After all, I was really amnesiac, and I've been with Ziyan for 5 years. I didn't want to make Zhu Yicheng sad or insecure. The pain I had suffered didn't need to be endured by Zhu Yicheng too. I thought that someone as proud as Ziyan would give up after being rejected repeatedly. So after blocking Ziyan's contact information, I put my phone aside and focused on struggling with the zipper behind me. After struggling for a long time with no result, I called out to ask the waiter to help me sort out my skirt and zipper. I called twice, but no one responded outside. I was a little strange and wanted to change back into my clothes to go out and check. A hand stretched in from outside the curtain, grabbed the zipper and pulled it up easily. I let out a sigh of relief and turned around to thank him. But what I saw was Ziyan's pale face. Before I could go out, Zhu Yan reached out and grabbed me, his voice begging, "King Ching, give me a little time." I reached out and slowly pried open Ziyan's fingers, which were tightly holding my wrist. Took a step back and said calmly, "What do you want to do?" "I heard that Suqian has been sent abroad by Mrs. C. Could it be that he wants me to go to Mrs. T and intercede for Suqian to let her come back? If so, Suqian was really shameless, but unexpectedly, didn't mention Suqian at all." After seeing the resistance in my eyes, he paused for a moment, forced a smile, and coaxed me gently, "King, don't be afraid of me. You used to like me the most, and you even specially learned to make soup for me." The more Ziyan spoke, the hoarser his voice became. His dark pupils stared at me deeply, as if waiting for my reaction. Seeing that I was indifferent, the corners of his eyes turned red. He said almost eagerly, King, we've been together for 5 years. I'm your fiancé." He even took out his phone, opened an encrypted file and held it in front of me, letting me look at the photos above. "This is a photo I took of you when you came to deliver soup and fell asleep waiting in the president's office. You used to love me so much, I'm your fiancé. Don't marry Zhu Yicheng." "Okay, King, let's start over." After listening for a while, I interrupted Ziyan impatiently. My voice calmed Ziyan. I didn't lose my memory. Upon hearing this, Ziyan's expression froze, and he forced a smile, asking hoarsely, "Hey, King, you didn't lose your memory?" His eyes turned even redder, looking a little confused. "Then why do you want to marry Zhu Yicheng?" "I remember you used to love me so much." A touch of water flashed across Ziyan's eyes, and his eyelashes trembled. He looked even more fragile than the day he was punished, but I didn't want to continue entangling with him. I looked at him calmly and said that was in the past. "I don't love you anymore." Now the person I loved. Before I could finish speaking, Ziyan looked flustered and reached out to cover my mouth. But faster than Ziyan was another arm. Zhu Yicheng walked into the fitting room, protecting me completely behind him, and said coldly to the red-eyed Ziyan, "Now the person King likes is me, and she will be my wife." Ziyan opened his bloodshot eyes and looked at me as if confirming. I nodded and replied simply, "Yes." All the remaining color faded from Ziyan's face. He looked silently at my hand clasped with Zhu Yicheng's, then turned around and stumbled out. I buried my face in Zhu Yicheng's neck, my voice low. I hate him. So I didn't feel the slightest bit sorry for him. The response I got was a tighter hug, and